Zimbabwe's opposition MDC party today launched its policy documents as part of preparations for elections. The party leader, Nelson Chamisa, says he's confident the MDC will do very well during the elections.
As the electoral playing field heats up in Zimbabwe, the country's main opposition MDC alliance today launched its policy document that it hopes will appeal to the generality of Zimbabweans. The party hopes to achieve a $100 billion economy in the next 5 years. The launch comes just 2 days after the party held a successful march calling for the implementation of electoral reforms. The youthful leader, however, backtracked on his threats and said he was confident of electoral victory come July 30.
Yes, we may have problems with the reforms and we need the reforms to be sorted out. But it is all well because God is in it. I'm aware that I'm going to be the president of the former president Robert Mugabe and the current president who is the outgoing president Idi Mnangagwa. I'm not worried. I'm not worried because God is in it. I'm not worried. I'm not worried. I've been told that if you win, the military will say no. I know that our military is patriotic and professional, and God is in it.
And turning to foreign policy, Chamisa wants strong relations with Israel and called for the opening of the Israeli embassy in the capital, Harare. This as South Africa has taken a decision to downgrade its embassy in Israel.
We must re-establish our relationship with Israel. We must have the embassy of Israel coming back here. We must have our embassy in Israel. Why? Because Israel is such an important player and partner going forward in terms of our reconstruction agenda, but also in terms of our spiritual renewal as a nation. We need to renew ourselves. We need to redirect ourselves. That's the direction I hope to take this nation. If it give me the mentor to be in charge and to be in charge on your behalf.
More parties are expected to launch their manifestos this weekend.
And for more on developments from Zimbabwe, we now joined via Skype by political analyst Mr. Chamuka Chirimamboa. Very good evening to you, Mr. Chirimamboa. Thank you so much for joining us and welcome to the Globe. I must say this is a very ambitious manifesto by the MDC. What is at the core of this manifesto?
Yeah, evening. Yeah, quite a very ambitious manifesto. Yeah, it's a very ambitious manifesto when you look at the whole issue of trying to achieve $100 billion economy by 2029. So basically, while this is achievable, one thing which we have to acknowledge is that it's not going to be a stroll in the park. It will actually call for a visionary leadership, a dedicated leadership, and actually means that the MDC right from day one, when it gets into office, it will need to have a radical policy shift and address the fundamentals of the economy. But whether it will be achievable, that is a question of time to tell. But one thing which we have to acknowledge is that is no mean task to achieve. It's something which is quite big and very ambitious.
Now, the alliance has complained of bias in the electoral governing body. Is this perhaps a correct reflection?
The issue of bias, in the electoral body is quite evident. Like, for instance, if you look at how the electoral body in particular has not been giving truthful information, like one key issue is the issue of the voters' roll, its availability. We are actually 7 days before nomination, and the Electoral Act is quite clear that for you to be nominated, you should actually be nominated by people who are on the voters' roll. But as it stands, that voters' roll remains a mystery, a secret, and VEC chairperson Priscilla Chigumba has been lying that there's a link for a provision of voters' roll on their website. And when one goes through the website, you don't find that voters' roll. And out of interest, I've also actually gone through the ZEC website, and I haven't yet seen the link for the voters' roll. So these are some of the issues which shows that the electoral body is not being truthful, is not being transparent, is still living in the cloud of suspicion as it used to do.
Now, you've been following developments in Zimbabwe for quite a while now, and you will agree with me that the Zimbabwe's financial system is actually living on borrowed time. As a matter of fact, one analyst even likened the Zimbabwean economy to a house of cards. You remove one card and then poof, the entire system collapses. But then for the MDC to be making such ambitious promises as such as $100 billion US dollar economy by 2029, I mean, for a country that is has a GDP growth of 1.8% and a GDP per capita of slightly over $900 US dollars, this is just a pie in the sky, wouldn't you say?
I wouldn't say it's a pie in the sky. This is something which is achievable. Remember what I said earlier on to say, it's not a stroll in the park achieving a $100 billion economy. But at the same time, if you look at the economy, the Zimbabwean economy, and also the resources which it has, particularly when you look at its human resource potential, and also, a very significant diaspora population, which has been playing quite a key fundamental role, particularly in the sustenance of the economy. There is opportunity to achieve that, but achieving that is no mean task, and that will be far much more dependent on what the MDC will do from day one when it gets into power. But what we have to actually agree is that it's not a walk in the park. It means working from day one until 2029, and also the issue of the national vision, which they're talking about, to say within the first 6 months they'll try to create a national development vision. And I think that will be one of the most fundamental milestones to say, will the MDC be able to achieve the $100 billion economy by 2029? But I do agree with you that it's no task, but what I would want to describe it as a pie in the sky.
Now, you mentioned of an opportunity, that there is actually an opportunity of creating a $100 billion economy by 2029. That's actually 10 years from now. An opportunity of creating such an economy is one thing. And then on the other hand, of course, the availability of corporate governance in Zimbabwe, which the country doesn't have at the moment. Why are you so confident that it is actually possible?
Basically, Zimbabwe doesn't have corporate governance, but when you look at the corporate governance problem in Zimbabwe, it's much more about political will and the orientation of the governments which have been there, and also partly, to some extent, the current government, in as much as it has been trying to say Zimbabwe is open for business. There are quite a number of significant factors which you have to take into account. You have to look at the resilience of the Zimbabwean economy and how it has managed to survive. That Zimbabwe, when you look at the record hyperinflation it went through, and also the political and economic crisis that it went through, Zimbabwe did not implode as a country, and that speaks actually to the resilience of Zimbabwe and its institutions. So to me, this is already a bedrock or something which can be built upon if the right leadership is there and if the right policies are there. And I can take you to the period of the inclusive government. If you look at Zimbabwe back then, there were no basic commodities on the shelves, and there wasn't any cash. There was a problem of foreign currency. But it only took a matter of a short time to address these shortages, particularly around basic commodities, and also the availability of cash within the banks and the availability of foreign currency. So these are some of the things, these are some of the paths that have been walked before. So to me, I've always remained hopeful that it's possible once the political will is there to address the issues, the economic fundamentals of the Zimbabwean economy.
All right, the Zimbabwean economy aside, now the opposition says it wants to get closer to Israel. Is this viewed perhaps shared by ordinary Zimbabweans and the opposition supporters in particular?
I think to me it's much more of an international relations strategy on the part of the MDC. The issue of Israel and Palestine, it's not a domestic voting issue in Zimbabwe, and this is one thing which we have to appreciate. is something which is quite abstract and removed from the ordinary voter. But when you look at it from an international relations perspective, I think, to me, from my view, I think it's much more about the MDC trying to position itself and win allies. You should also look at the shifts, in particular from Britain, the shift in Britain in terms of its policy towards Zimbabwe, where it is now actually re-engaging with the current administration of President Mnangagwa, and it is warming and thawing. It's actually warming up to the President Mnangagwa's administration. Yet previously or historically, Britain has tended to ally with the opposition. So I think it's also about the MDC trying to find inroads, particularly mostly with the Israeli and the American bloc, trying to reposition. That's how I'm actually reading this situation. But when you come to the Zimbabwean electorate, this position won't mean so much, but it's more on an issue of the international relations strategy.
Surely the opposition is worried this relationship might actually pierce some holes in its relationship with the Palestinians. Am I right?
You mean to pierce some holes with Palestine?
I beg your pardon?
I beg your pardon?
No, I'm asking if this is the opposition perhaps not worried this relationship might pierce some holes with the relationship it has with the Palestinians.
It might, but one thing which you have to look at in terms of the MDC as a party has never had strong relationships with the Palestine. It has never had any real relationship that I am aware of or that I have known. But the party that has had a much more closer relationship with Palestine has been TANU-PF, but MDC, it doesn't have a strong relationship. So to me, I don't think it will change so much. It will change so much in terms of MDC's relationship with Palestine, or even.
Unfortunately, that line is diabolical, but then we do thank him for his time. That is a political analyst, Mr. Chamisa Chirimamboa, speaking to us via Skype from Harare in